Okay, let's start this again. Today, we're going to be talking about how to get people, your website visitors, to check out on your website. So, we talked about the last two episodes about how to have the interest and get them to the website, how to keep them coming back, which is kind of that trust. And now we're going to talk about how to get them to convert with you. So, let's get back here. This is what we're talking about today. So the decision has to get them to add to cart and to or to get in touch with you, and then how to get those people who are willing and able. So you might have an experience here, and feel free to put any questions you have in the chat. But where people might get in touch, but you still have to do a little bit of work to convince them. So a lot of service-based businesses, I definitely have that experience where people will be like, how do I they inquire, but then I still have to get them over the line to purchase. So we've talked about this before. Those awareness and those interest parts are part one and part two of this series, which you can watch back on YouTube. So, how do we do this? We really need to build this trust with people, which we've talked about. There's lots of automated ways that you can do that. And let me jump into some examples. So 70% of a decision, this is from a recent Hubstack report, HubSpot, sorry, report, which does a lot of analytics about user behavior. 70% of that decision of often is what people deciding about whether they're going to buy from you is made behind closed doors. And that's why having a website that is working effectively for you has the ability for people to convert people without you having to, make those phone calls every time, you get some interest. A lot of the automation tools and things I'm going to show you today is to how to get people so they're coming to your website is one thing, but then to build them, move them down that funnel and to build that trust and to get them to actually spend money with you is a lot of the time is that behind the scenes, that stalking, so there's 70% of what they might be engaging with you might not even know, unless you're watching your analytics really closely and things like that, but you don't necessarily know exactly who they are, what they're thinking. Maybe you can watch their behaviors and what time of days and things like that, but there's a lot that you might not know about them because they're not we and as consumers are more and more so coming up, looking behind the scenes and deciding what we think about a brand before we ever even ask them or engage with them. So this is why a website is so important to be able to do some of this work for helping people with that decision who want to stay anonymous. And the reason I use this example of this picture is because I think that what we sometimes don't understand as people who are selling is that we as consumers often feel this fear, or this like, the uncertainty about, is this the right, decision for me? Am I ready to make this purchase? And is this person actually going to be able to fulfill their promise? Oh, it's a big investment, or, maybe I don't need it right now, or there's other expenses that I should make, all of these things. So knowing that your consumer is probably coming in with, consumer anxiety or overwhelm or uncertainty, that is why so much of the trust building that we can do through a website is so vital, because it means that you're helping the consumer to be comfortable letting go of their hard-earned dollars, right? We all know that you get your paycheck and you can only go so far. Not many of us have an unlimited bank account where we can just, every time we see something that we want, we can buy it. So knowing that your consumer is likely coming in with a little bit of like, is this right for me? And that kind of fear, and is it worth taking the leap, is where you can go, well, what do I need to do in order for that to feel like a safe option for them? And that's why building trust is so important with them, because this is how they're likely to come to you, And I think just as consumers, we are more and more skeptical, where we're just on more high alert for scams, and the cost of living and, the fear of the future, all of those things can help people can put barriers between whether people are going to make a decision, and so your job is to really go above and beyond to build that trust. So how do we build that trust with our website? You want to keep them on the website for as long as possible. So this is where there's some examples that I gave in our last workshop as well. But some features that you can do is some blogs. So obviously content to read. Some of the examples that I gave in our last webinar was like there can be a mix of entertainment stuff, and it could be, a list of books to read. It could be expert advice. So giving people, fresh content to consume. Blogs is also a really good way to keep people coming back. If there's fresh, it's a really simple thing. You might not be updating your services or your products all the time, but you can update the advice that you give or the recommendations or the styling tips or whatever it is in your business that you can offer. So blogs is a really good way to keep people on the website. Frequently asked questions. So yeah, people, again, that trust, if they're thinking, imagine a customer kind of leaning back, being like, oh, that's the ledge, it's scary. If I can go and get all my questions answered, there's some, personally on Squarespace, there's templates for it. So it's really easy in different ways to do it. And you can do it throughout, So I've got a general frequently asked questions, but then I've also got frequently asked questions for certain products. If I launch a coaching academy, I'll do a specific frequently asked questions for that exact offering. So if you're bringing in something new, it might be like, and think that sometimes the simplest answers, the questions people might want, what if I can't make the webinar live, or can I get a refund? All of those things that what might be stopping them. Testimonials, so other people's experiences, and examples of your work. So there's some ways that you can get people to really take a deep dive into who you are and what you stand for, and what you're capable of. Having a really clear tone of voice, consistent branding, and a face to the name or the brand that showcases what you stand for, what values you have as a brand, and why you're there. So making sure that that is clear and consistent, the colors, tone of voice, fonts, across all of the different pages on your website, and also that it matches up to other platforms that they might have found you on. That your website is easy to navigate, so there's clear menus, and that there's not too many spam features. So making sure it's really easy to navigate to the menu to find out more. So if we want to build trust, we want to keep people on the website for longer, how do we do that? Navigation. It's a really simple thing, but often people overlook it. And, I catch this on clients' websites that I work with, coaching and reviewing websites. Sometimes the menu bar is too hard to find, or it's too complex, or it's too cryptic, So a really clear menu bar. And then we'll have some features, and there's some that I've talked about, pop-up boxes and things, but not too many spam features, So make sure there's really clear direction. If it's like, hey, join the mailing list, here's, once. But then you don't, maybe you want to make sure you don't have 10 of those boxes popping up every different page that they come onto, so it doesn't feel too spammy. And that's why that, going back to this example here, is that brand, the face to the name. Not everyone is, often people will come to me in coaching and say, do I have to put a face to the name? I recommend it because it's a trust building thing. We can see that there's a real person behind the brand. I think that's going to get more and more important, is to find out who's running this, and that it's a brand aligned with my values, but also it's a real person. I'm not going to get scammed. But being able to have, which is over here, I've got the about page that can tell your story and what you stand for. Okay, so then clearly state the problem or the need that they might have, plus the solution and the value that you can add to them on your homepage. So think about it as your, your elevator pitch, your values statement, your mission statement, whatever it is. What is that clear, like, advice, the problem that you're solving, or the solution that you're offering, or the value that you're adding to that person's life, so that when I get to your website, and I'll repeat this throughout in a few different tips, the aim of the game is that you go, oh, this is what you do. I know what this person does. So again, similar to the menu bar, making sure that's really clear. It's, you can say, there's lots of different ways to say what you do and how you do and what you stand for, but clearly stating on that homepage before they even scroll what you do. So like, for me, it's a go-to source for straight up business advice. So it's super clear. My menu bar, I also have business coaching. So if I know, startup creative, I probably, maybe if I found it through a Google search, I'm coming to the website and I'm going, okay, cool. This looks like a business creative, website. In the menu bar, it says, business coaching. So it's a clear offering. It's okay, cool. Yep, I'm in the right place. I've seen those words. But then straight up business advice is, should be on my homepage. So what is that clear message of what you do with on the very first part of the page? An about page, I worked on this with a client recently. I think first and foremost, you want to have like a professional bio. So it could be a couple of sentences, what you do and why you're credible to do it. And then you might want to put a bit of a personal touch in too. So, as my example as a business coach, it's that I've worked with thousands of people. These are some of the brands I've worked with. These are the workshops I've done. This is how long I've been doing it. This is some results that I've had. But then it might be a bit of like, well, my passion is, and like a little bit about me. I love coffee and, playing tennis and, those types of things as well. So it's a little bit of that personal touch. But you don't want to give too much of your life story. You want to kind of lead with your professionalism, and then after that kind of professionalism, then you can kind of bring in that personal touch, that, builds on that as well, if it aligns to your brand. Contact details, so clear contact details. So, whether putting your email address, if you've got a phone number or an address, if you're a physical location, making sure those details are really clear. I think that's, people underestimate how just super clear contact details and terms and conditions build so much trust with your audience, because they can go, you're transparent with me about how I can get in touch. There's nothing worse than, I think Apple has gotten a bit better with it, but I think, Facebook is one of those, Meta, where people just get so frustrated because there's no one that they can talk to, right? So we lose our trust because it's, so just simple things like being like, hey, here's my clear contact details, shows that you're open for business, and that, if I do have a question or a concern, or, I can't find an answer, I can get in touch with you, and that you're willing to communicate with me and you want to have a relationship with me, and that you want me to trust you. And so like those terms and conditions, especially product-based businesses, I know for me, if I'm looking to buy clothing or something online, after like figuring out that I really want something, I'll often go and look at terms and conditions, because if we're making an online purchase, we want to be able to know, can I return it? How long is it going to take to get to me? What if the sizing is off, or, all of those different things. So those, again, terms and conditions, over communicating builds that trust. And then links to other platforms. So if you are coming to a website, if I've found often, I'll come to people's websites, I'll also want to be able to click through to their social media, their YouTube or Spotify or whatever it is, just to verify, just to be like, yep, okay, this is, it matches up. This person's got an online presence, and, I can maybe, I'm on the website and I'm deciding whether I want to make a purchase. Maybe I want to click quickly over to their social media and get, a better look of their face and their content and how they speak in a more, casual sense, that I can kind of quickly get that idea from social media. So making sure that all those clear links add up. And it also just builds that trust with knowing that, you do have a presence widely. Okay, so that's trust building. Second is showcasing that you are the expert. So thinking about, this is an audience, like the whole idea is if we, a mailing list is an auditorium. It's people that we're an audience that we're speaking to. It's that we want to get people to come and buy tickets to our show and to listen to us. So the idea of the expert status that I call it is something that you've got to be proactive about. So in a world where we have lots of different options as to who we can buy from 24/7, and all of those millions of people are trying to get the attention of the consumer, we need to differentiate to our audience why they should trust us. Why should they choose us? Why are we the expert that they need and they want? So, some ways in which you can do this is email automations. So, blogs and blogs to give expert advice. So, again, it's a bit of a taster, right? It's an opportunity for people to get a bit of an idea. I actually had this real life experience. I went to the markets on the weekend and there was a new cheese stand selling halloumi. And this, there was a bit of a crowd around it. So I was like, oh, what's going on over here? And they had a plate of tasters of this halloumi. And I had this, and I was thinking about this experience and how it is a perfect example of all of these topics that we're covering today. Is that and for me, an email automation or a blog, even video and audio embedded, it's a sample, right? It's the once you get someone comes and says, here, take a free piece of cheese, and you go, oh, that's delicious. It's warm and it smells good, and someone's given it to me for free. Then I literally walked over and was like, great, I'll have some. And they had lots of people ready to take payments, and they were answer they weren't even asking questions. They were just saying, put it back in the bag, it'll last in the fridge for this many days, this is how you should chop it, and just giving me all of that information. I was like, it made they saw that I was interested, and I stopped to taste it, and I had a good experience. I took one step closer to their stand, and then they were like, here are all your questions answered, tap, and I was out of there. So I'm going to talk about user experience, but in a minute. But that was a really good example for me in real life that ticked all of those boxes. So being able, I've talked about this before. I've got, email, different versions of emails set up on my website where, you can get free advice for 5 days. It's 5 tips to business success or something like that. And that's a way to be like, yep, here, take all of this free advice. Blogs also a chance to do that. Logos that you of other brands or places that you might be stocked, or brands that you've worked with or people that you've worked with, any qualifications that are relevant, experience that you have had, any media features. Again, free resources, a way to take a sample of the business and see whether it's right for you without having to make a commitment. I actually read this negotiations book years ago, and they were talking about how people actually, we're so comfortable. We are more comfortable if someone allows us to, not have to say yes. So we're more inclined to say no to being like, because it makes us feel safer and our boundary is there. And I think about that with free resources and giving people that taster, and, really showcasing in a generous way what you're capable of and what you've done before and what you can do for them, is a way to make people feel comfortable without having to get in touch, or that 70% of decision making that we talked about. That's a way that people got, we keep ourselves safe because we don't want to be sold to all of the time. So having all of this information built out on your website is a way to make people go, oh, okay, like no one's pressuring me, I can get all the information without having to speak to anyone, or commit to anything. So it allows me to feel safe and make the decision in my own time. So free resources, really love on web on the website, for example, with these workshops, I can upload them to YouTube, but and embed them into my website, so that people can come to the website and watch the video direct there with the transcript and the notes that I typed out from the workshop. And for the last one, we included the slides as well as examples, so it can all be in that one spot. Audio, you can also embed third party things like, my podcast is in there as well from a Spotify feed, so that it can all just be done in the one place. It's really that resume of like, this is everything that I'm doing. Testimonials, again, there's some really great features where you can just get those them on the website and add them multiple times across different pages on your website. Again, don't be afraid to use some of these features across multiple pages. So for example, a really big one for me in my expert status are some of the brands that I've worked with. People will, I spoke recently, I had a talk and somebody did my intro and said, these are the brands that Kayleen has worked with. And it was people were like, oh, okay, like, let's listen up. Take her seriously. And so I've got this feature on my website where I've got all these logos, and I can copy that across my homepage, my coaching page, my about page, so that it's reiterating it in case people didn't scroll that far and see it. Galleries and portfolios, especially for those service-based businesses, really showcasing the work that you've done in the past so that people can get a taste for what you do. And like I said, expert status is really about being proactive. So if people have got multiple different options as to who they can buy from, and they've also probably got, buyer anxiety about whether to invest or not, your job is to make them to feel comfortable so it doesn't feel like they're standing on the edge of that ledge, right? So how can you go, one of the questions that I often do is ask that, why you? What makes you the expert? Who are they looking to trust? What makes them trust you? And sit down and brainstorm that. And think about what are their values, and who else do they trust, and why should they trust me? And think, and then actively start making sure that you're showcasing all of those things. I think sometimes we can not want to give all of our resume or things up there, but showcasing the successes and the experiences and the media features and all of those things are really good for helping people to make that decision behind closed doors, which is leading them up to that decision making. All right, so then you want to think about calling people to action. So this is where they start to come and actually check out, right? They're going to spend their money with you. So there's a few different ways that you can set up calls to actions on the website. These are some of the examples that I've used, which is the pop-up box, which is, it pops up and says join the mailing list, free resources. So I've got them set up on my website where it's a mailing list, but then I also have resources in the shop. So the reason that I did that is that I could include a little bit more detail about the free resources by listing them as a shop in the shop, but I could also encourage people to come and go see what else might be in the shop. If they're adding to cart, perhaps maybe they also want to, put a book in there or something as well. So there are a few different ways to call people to action. Again, we talked about the website banner, buttons, and using different calls to action. So when I talk about call to action, I think we really want to make sure that you are making it really clear. So again, when you think about your target market, and we talked a little bit about this in the last workshops, which is what are they interested in? So is it perhaps that they're looking to get in touch? Are they looking to buy now? Are they looking to inquire for more information? What is the thing that they are going to, sometimes often there's something to keep an eye out for when you do your buttons and your call to actions. test a few different words out. So you might say buy now, you might say shop now, you might say get in touch or start now or let's begin or all those things. But so you can test a few different ones out. Sometimes I've noticed with some of my clients is that it'll be like book now, and maybe you've only given me a little bit more information and I'm not quite ready to make a decision. I want to get more information, or I want to click through to the next page. So if it is on your homepage and it might be that you want to actually ask them to inquire more first, and that clicks through to for example, on a homepage for Startup Creative, it might say business coaching and it might say, inquire now or like learn more. And then they go to the business coaching page and then they can read all the information and see testimonials and all of that. And then they can get in touch, right? And so they might fill out a form. And then that's a decision, or more information. So think about where they might be, what position in the sales funnel they would be at, but in where your call to actions are. So perhaps on the homepage, you might not want to, if you've just attracted them, they've only been on the site for 3 seconds. Maybe there is a really clear buy now because it's a product and they've clicked through to the website because they've seen it on Instagram and it's a piece of clothing and they go, oh yeah, there it is. Okay, cool. Buy now. And that's it. They're ready for that. But maybe they need a little bit more information. And so you could actually say learn more before they are ready to actually buy. Because I've noticed myself, and I notice this sometimes with clients, if it's too much like buy now, sometimes you have that moment where you're like, if I click on this, is it going to take my credit card details or something? So thinking about where in the funnel they would be. And then for especially service-based businesses, this is a example of a contact form that I had on my website for my speaking engagements. And so there's an opportunity. There's lots of really great features where you can get as much information as possible too. So like we said that people want to come and get as much information from you. If you're especially a service-based business and you're looking to book clients or a speaking gig, the more information that you can get from somebody in the first get-go, the more likely it is that you can come back with a response. So, I talk about this with pitching and selling a lot with coaching clients is you want to get to yes as quick as possible. So if someone says, hey, do you do, if it was just a basic contact form that said, are you available for speaking gigs? Then I would come back and say, yes, when, how long, where are you based, what topics do you want, right? Or they can give me all that information in the get-go and I can say, yes, this is how much it would cost. I'm available and, would you like to jump on a call to book it in? And so it shortens the back and forth, which makes it more likely to get that sale. So yeah, a few different examples there. Okay, another really good way to obviously get people to check out is the content that you're providing for them. So, if there is too much, I was thinking about how Times Square, I was thinking about overwhelming advertising, and I thought Times Square is a perfect example of probably social media, right? How many times have you been to Times Square? I mean, I remember going for the first time with my dad, and he was like, "Oh my God." And I was thinking, I was like, I don't actually recall any of the advertisements that I was in there because it's more about the flashing bright lights than actually what you're reading, right? My experience anyway. So content creation is a way to keep building that relationship and getting people over the line to actually be ready to purchase. So how I do this is I start with 4 to 7 brand values. So what do I stand for? What are my pillars? What are my brand values? So it's, ours is very much like go-to source for straight up business advice, saying it how it is, gender neutral, those kind of things. accessibility, inclusive, no BS, like all those, they're my kind of brand values of the kind of business advice that I want to give. And then I go even further and I say, what does that look like as content pillars? So, we can often get overwhelmed with needing to create content, blogs, social media, free, resources, incentives to join the mailing list, all of those things. But when you just come down to like, what is the, three or four content pillars, so start kind of big and brainstorm your brand values, kind of bring it down to 4 to 7. And then I tend to have about 4 content pillars. So that's what I then use as my parameters for the content that I'm creating. So I took mine have we educate, we inspire, and we help people to grow their businesses, and then sharing my personal startup story. So that's the 4 kind of content pillars that I base everything on. And so for me, I then go, that also fits into my target market. So there's the people at the beginning of this startup journey, which is maybe where they want to be inspired to start. And then, yes, you can do it. So that's me telling my story or other people's stories of being like, look, this is an inspirational story. You can do it too. Then there's, and also like inspirational quotes, a lot of the just start and things like that. And then we've got education. So great, I'm inspired and I'm ready to start. Now, where do I start? I need to be educated. So it's how to start a side hustle book. It's coming to a webinar. It's those, business coaching. Grow, people who have started but they're ready to take it up a notch or whatever that might be. And so again, what are they looking for? Maybe they're looking for resources, business coaching, and then that personal startup story really taps into that like relatability in the way that we want to present our brand. So for me, they're the 4 things that I do to create content for the site to help people to have that trust and go, if our overall brand value is go-to source for straight up business advice, if you want everything that you need as a straight up business advice, then you need to be inspired, you need to be able to be educated, you need opportunities and support to growth, and you probably want to learn from someone who's relatable, that you relate to. That's the brand of people that I'm attracting. So from those 4 things, then I create social media content, blog content, resources for my website, and paid and free. 1 in 4 of my kind of content pieces might be a really clear call to action. So we talked a little bit about this with that trust building in the last workshop, how to keep people coming back to your website. You don't want to always just be like, buy, 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 buy. You want to also think about how you can build that trust and relationship. And I would be more inclined to inspire people to keep coming back to your website, and then eventually, 1 in 4 times is like, and here's a reason to buy. So not everything is always just buy from me. It's that, here, read this blog, download this thing, watch this webinar, listen to this podcast, and here's some business coaching, an opportunity to come get business coaching. And don't be afraid to repeat the content as well. So you can do it in lots of different ways, whether it's, using this webinar as a blog on our website, turning it into a podcast, using it as, some content for social media, and then testing the different ways. So again, I talk a lot about mailing lists because I cannot recommend them enough. But having different mailing lists on my website. So, there's a pitch example email draft that people can download. There's the 5 tips for successful business. There's a business plan template. There's, I think there's another thing that I set up recently. But you can also look at that and you can put them on different lists so you can see which is the most popular. You can also, with the buttons and the call to actions on the website, you can also see on the back end of your website what buttons people are clicking on. So if you use different call to actions, you can see what call to actions people are responding most to. So is it that they're looking to, just start, to buy now, what page they're clicking on those buttons? But testing those different ways. And so again, with the mailing list, you can go, okay, well, getting a lot of people getting the business plan. So maybe let's really create some more content for that inspirational, just starting kind of target market. Or maybe we're getting a lot of people looking to download the marketing book. So how do we put something up for that? So that content planning again is that converting people by creating that fresh content. All right. And so then the next part is the user experience. So if you want to convert people to the website, similar to what I talked about at the markets, right? If I have to wait too long in a market line, or it's not clear what people, what exactly they're selling, then maybe it's just like the crowds are actually annoying for me and I'm going to walk away from it. So um, yeah, too much weird signage, and different directions that people are just going to get confused and to walk away. So don't underestimate the user experience of your website and how smooth you can make it and simple you can make it. And think about that. You really, if you think back to week one of this workshop, we talked about the analogy of a website being the lobby of a hotel, that people are coming into, or the reception area of a business, is they're coming in to go, am I in the right place? And your job is to go, hi, welcome. Yes, thanks for coming and, stepping into our hotel. Can we help you? This is what's on offer. This is how much it's going to cost. This is the availability. This is, the facilities that we have available. Would you like a glass of water while you wait? All of those things. So that opportunity, yeah, people coming in and really clearly being able to get all of that information is whether they're going to stick around and decide whether, like, yep, okay, yep, take my credit card details, I'm going to book a hotel room, or they're going to go, ooh, no one's paid any attention to me, I'm just going to sneak out the back door and pretend I never came in here, and I'll go down the road and find another place. So this user experience is where, again, I talked about this, is being really clear about what you do. So on that homepage, what is your mission statement? So if you haven't already, go back to that kind of elevator pitch. So, what do you do? And someone being able to say, boom, this is what we do, our go-to source for straight up business advice. Or, we sell, locally made produce, or, artisan cheese, or whatever it is, right? Super clear, what is that? Can you put it up there from the get-go? Especially if somebody has clicked onto your website via an ad, or, a recommendation, or a social media post. It might have been a really quick interaction and they're looking to know more. And so when they click to your website for the first time, think about it as the way to know more is to go, oh, yes, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So, what is that problem or the solution that you're offering? Are they in the right place? So, again, reducing wait times and making sure everything loads really clearly, that the buttons work, that it's directing to the right pages, that if you do have videos or audio or big imagery, that it all loads and works really smoothly. So making it a smooth experience. And, you should be able to have that. And if you can't, again, getting that feedback. Don't be afraid to ask people, what they think of your website, how they experienced it, and take that feedback as well, and be able to implement that and make sure that it should be like that smooth and intuitive experience. And some really small tweaks in the user experience of your website can make such a big difference. So often I think that we don't, going and having an experience of your own website or somebody else's website, you can find the tiniest little things that can help you go, oh, that was a bit clunky, or, I'm looking for this answer, but I can't really find it. Maybe I should make that more obvious. Or, hang on, I've done this really important work and had this really amazing client, but I don't actually have that listed anywhere on my website. And maybe I should put that on my homepage. Again, thinking back to those kind of logos, sometimes I actually more recently did a press page on my website because I realized, and this is actually getting feedback from somebody else who was like, you have lots of great press features, but I hadn't actually put them all on the website. And I spent a whole day making a press page on my website where it wasn't even all the articles. It was I just made a page and I just put logos in there. So it was like a portfolio page and, screenshot the features and hyperlinked to all the different articles. But it, gives it showcases my expertise and it highlights, how long I've been around for and some of the brands that I've worked with. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of playing on these websites all the time. So I am always finding new ways to do those little extra things because that for me was an experience of somebody else saying, hey, you've got all I know all these things about you. And I was like, oh yeah, that is right. I guess I could tell people those things, right? So yeah, lots of different ways that you can do that. Um, but yeah, any questions, feel free to let me know. And I will send these out with the slides out and the recording out this afternoon. But just as a quick recap, it's talking about that sales funnel. What we're really trying to do is get people to from awareness, interest, and then the decision and the action is the conversion part. In order to get people to convert, you want to focus on trust building, showcasing your expertise, having really clear call to actions, multiple different times ways, test out really different ways to do it, and regular fresh content that showcases your expertise and what you're capable of, and then making sure that your user experience will be nice and smooth so that they can easily get to yes as quick as possible. So thank you so much. I hope it was helpful. Are you sending the emails we've registered? Yes, the email that you registered with will be the one that I sent it out to. But if you want to put your email in the chat, if it's different, then I'll put it on there. I can add it to the list. Thank you so much. Thank you, Susanna. Thanks for being here. And good luck. Let me know how you go. Feel free to get in touch if I can help with anything. Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Laura. Great. Good luck. Keep me posted. And yeah, enjoy the replay in case there's anything else. Thanks, Lisa. Have a good afternoon, everybody. Thank you.